King P here.
And Steely07.
And welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis. In this week's episode, we're speaking to Ortis Deley, seasoned TV personality and presenter of Channel 5's The Gadget Show, about the world of technology and also his extensive comic book collection and love of whiskey.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to This Week in Metropolis.
So, Ortis, as we were just discussing off air, thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Metropolis. Most people, I'm guessing, will know you from The Gadget Show or from maybe back in the day doing Live and Kicking. But from looking into your career, I've also seen that you brought out a single at one point, which I don't know whether you want to talk about that a bit.
That's still online. You can't hide from that.
But also, you have a degree in pharmacy.
Yeah. So let me address the single first. Up until about 5 or 6 years ago, it was fine. Friends more than sort of people that I met would ask about this rumored single that I once released. Say, I don't know what you're talking about. Nope, never did such a thing. No, you must be confusing me with someone else. And then, as I say, about 6 years ago, someone uploaded the video. Every now and again, a friend stumbles across it and I get berated for denying it. I'd only been presenting for a couple of years at that point. And so it was still very wet behind the ears, early 20s. And I love singing. In fact, I still sing in a band with a bunch of mates. We just do it for fun. And the idea of being a sort of pop star was very attractive. At this time I was interviewing Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and any boy band or pop star you could shake a stick at, and I wanted some of that, and the opportunity came, and it didn't quite materialize in the way that I wanted to, so I just tried to brush it under the carpet and forget about it. But digital doesn't allow you to forget, you see.
That's it. It will come back. Maybe you should do sort of a 20th anniversary sort of reunion as such.
Some things are best left in the past, I think. There is one sort of nugget of pride that I can take from it. The single was called Trouble, and at the time I was presenting on the children's channel, or TCC as it had then become, and TCC was growing up. They were no longer airing shows for sort of 5 to 12-year-olds. They had started showing American comedies like Hang Time and Sweet Valley High, dramas like Degrassi Junior High. And so their audience was older, teenagers, and the channel was developing an attitude. So they had this campaign to rebrand the channel for the summer, and they heard about the single that I had recorded, and they used a snippet of it during the campaign. We shot a series of adverts for it that went out not just across cable and satellite, but went out on some mainstream commercial channels as well. Yeah. And the campaign was so successful, as was the sort of temporary rebranding of TCC, that they decided to take the name Trouble. And that wouldn't have happened without the single. And I was at Trouble then for another 4, maybe 5 years, and they were some of the best years of my career. So it wasn't all bad.
See, no, that's a fond memory. I think you can't forget about that song. Definitely not.
I was going to say, so what led you to the Gadget Show? Because your career kind of went around a few different ways.
Yeah, so I left Trouble and was at CBBC for 10 years. But about halfway through my time there, I wanted to move on and do and host shows for grown-ups, my peers. It wasn't that I didn't want to do children's television anymore. I just didn't think the viewers believed in me. I thought they were looking at me and saying, "Oh, this guy's old enough to be my dad. He's not that cool older brother that I want to hang out with anymore. He's too old." So I wanted to preempt this by moving into sort of grown-up genre of television, and it was a very difficult move to make. And it didn't happen for 5 years. I applied, I heard that I moved agents, and my agent asked me, what shows would you like to work on? You know, if I could wave a magic wand, are there any TV shows out there that you'd like to be a part of? And there was only honestly one show on air in terms of UK television that I could see myself being a part of. Both my wife watched The Gadget Show and we were fans. And I knew one of the presenters. I'd previously worked with Jason I'd worked with Jason at TCC and Trouble. And my agent did a bit of digging, and about 6 months into, you know, our partnership, she said The Gadget Show were looking for a new presenter. Dallas Campbell was moving on and there was a space. So I went and had a meeting with the exec producer. We got on really well. He said, no need to do a screen test. I know what you're capable of. And within 2 days, I was told I was part of the team. So I wanted to be on the show because I was a fan. I still am a fan. It's a show that if I had the time, if I had more time, I would watch more regularly. But, you know, my wife and I try to sit down and watch the episodes as and when we can.
Fantastic. Do you think, I don't know, was you worried? I would be worried in your situation that that'd be a dream come true, being on like the Gadget Show. If you're interested in technology, but like a child in a toy shop, you know, as such. Was there ever that worry of, oh God, that I might get bored of all these things that I really enjoy? Oh,
no, because I grew up on a healthy diet of cartoons, science fiction, and sort of British comedy, and there was no way, if it was related to science and technology, I was going to get bored of it, because it is you two know, it is a constantly evolving, innovating, changing, surprising area of human endeavor. There are always new and amazing stories to read about, be told about. So I was never going to get bored of the subject matter. You could get bored of your job, I guess, even if you like the area you're working in. But that's not my scenario at the moment, and hopefully it won't be for some time to come.
What was the first gadget when you joined the show? What was the first one that they gave you and said, here you go, here's your gig as such?
I think my first day at work was, we went to West London and we went to Sky TV headquarters because they were about to launch Sky 3D.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it. That was my first day at work. First day at work. That was my first day on the Gadget Show, covering Sky's foray into 3D TV.
Amazing. I bet there have been lots of things as well of that nature, that because 3D for a while was going to be the saviour of cinema and home entertainment and things like that. But now
didn't really catch on, did it?
I like IMAX. I like going to see Star Wars and the big things in IMAX. I always make a point of that. But at home, it's not really been adopted. I bet there have been quite a few of those sort of things that you've.
There have been. I mean, personally, I'm not too fussed about 3D, but I love watching a good IMAX movie or a movie shot for the IMAX screen. Yes, there will always be stumbles and things that were predicted to be big and didn't quite take off, or things that we were told would sort of be around for a little while and have stuck. Wi-Fi is one of them. When Wi-Fi first came along, I think where were we? Trying to think where we were in terms of phone reception. I think we were maybe 1.5 approaching 2G. And this was before I joined the Gadget Show, but one of the presenters said, we can't really see it catching on. It'll be mobile communication all the way.
I used to work in Car Phone Warehouse for around that time.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. It was, mobile communications would bypass everything. And you're sort of seeing it a little bit now, aren't you?
You are now. Yes, you are now. But this is
15, 20 years ago, wasn't it? Really. Yeah. Was there any gadget that you think that you were hyped up a bit about that you thought, next week we're looking into this, or next week we're seeing this, I can't wait to see it, and it was really disappointing, or it didn't work at all at the time?
I mean, tech not working is par for the course on the Gadget Show. One of the most popular statements you'll hear on any given shoot day is it worked in the office. We insist that our researchers, or our production team, should we say, test the tech before we use it, and it doesn't always work. A hard reboot doesn't always work. Turning it on and off doesn't always work, and it happens all the time. Can I say? I don't know. It's really difficult to be disappointed by tech in the short space of time that we get to play with it.
Sure. How long would they give you then in terms of?
What would be great?
When you're doing a segment.
What would be great would be to live with the tech before going on the show, then using it and reviewing it. But such is the turnover of the series that we don't always get the chance. Here's one. We had a turntable that using magnets levitated, so the turntable itself was suspended in the air, and it looked gorgeous. It literally was a turntable floating in the air, rotating, and so I was excited about this being someone raised on vinyl. This would be a centerpiece to rival the TV screen. And it was all set up, and the whole team was there, the team behind the tech, and we put some vinyl on and moved the needle onto it, and and it wouldn't get up to speed, and the turntable wouldn't spin in a fixed axis. It was wobbling, so the sound was awful, and I wanted to laugh. Inside I was rolling in the aisles, but the team were here. Oh no! Obviously sweating, had their fingers crossed. This was a big moment.
This is their moment.
Their tech was featuring on the Gadget Show.
Oh no!
And it just didn't work. And it's when that happens, you tread the line between, ridiculing the item to a point where there's no recovery, or saying, or, you know, or giving the right level of critique. You know, it's not for me. Maybe a bit more time in the, you know, back in the lab, or, you know, sometimes it's a difficult balance when it happens like that. But that's one piece I can remember being really, really excited about, and it just not delivering on the day.
Shame.
We had Ricky Martin, the art ninja, on the show a few weeks ago. And one of the things we asked him is about old technology, even down to a pencil and a bit of paper.
Yeah.
And whether he still likes to use that sort of thing. And he said 100%. He always, as much as all the new tech is there, he still likes to go back to the old ways of doing things. Is there an old piece of technology that hasn't been modded up to modern day standards that you still rely on a daily basis?
Looking around the kitchen here. I'm quite old school in some things. So, you know, we talked about vinyl. There's no replacing that crackle. That crackle just feels good to me when I hear it. It lets me know that something good is coming.
Yeah.
And then with other stuff, when I was hitting the gym, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a week and training like really hard, I didn't have a fitness monitor on, no biometrics or anything like that, or no digital scanning of my biometrics, just how I felt after a session and a tape measure. You know, I would measure my chest, I would measure my biceps, measure my thigh, to get any feedback on how well I was doing. And then in terms of exertion, if my heart felt like it was beating out of my chest and I was sweating and panting for breath, then I'd been working hard.
Yeah.
I didn't need a smart watch or a fitness tracker to tell me that.
Yeah.
And I am determined to get back into the gym at some point to try and get fit for 50. But I'm pretty sure it will just be me and the equipment in the gym. Could I be persuaded to use a heart rate monitor? Maybe. My wife uses a fitness app while we're, you know, on lockdown or in this tier structure.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm peering in. They look like decent workouts, so maybe I'll join her. But for the most part, it's old school, how I actually feel in myself in a tape measure.
Exactly. Well, we spoke with a personal trainer, and his ethos was exactly that, you know, he trained, he does martial arts as well. He trained in Japan and was lifting wood and, you know, bits of metal and that sort of thing. And there's, you know, in his words, the human body hasn't changed for 100 years or whatever, and those simple processes still apply as such.
Functional training, I think, was and is a big thing. Going through movements that you would use in your lifetime. You know, if you're walking to work, you don't lunge walk to work, do you?
No. If you're being really efficient with your workout, you do.
Depends how late I am.
Lifting boxes. So exercises like squats, for example, you know, that's a functional exercise. Bicep curls, to a degree, is a functional exercise, because you're always bringing things up to your face. But
you're a personal trainer as well, is that right?
I did qualify as a personal trainer a few years back. Yeah, I say a few, 7 years back now.
What was the motivation for that then? Was that just pursuing an interest as such?
It was pursuing an interest, but it had been motivated by a lack of interest in me as a TV presenter. So I went through a period where I couldn't get any meetings with any companies in television at all. I'd had a bad day at the office hosting some athletics events for Channel 4.
Right.
And as a result of that, I lost that job. And then a few months later was dropped from the Gadget Show. And as a result of those two things happening very, very close to each other, I guess my name became blacklisted, and nobody wanted to touch me. So for 2 years, I was out of television. And after about a year, after accepting that I wasn't going to get back into TV, I had to think about how I was going to retrain, redefine, and sort of reinvent myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the money or the time to go back to university and sort of brush up on my degree.
Yeah.
I wanted something that was going to give results relatively instantly, which is something personal trainers say doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Can't give you instant results. These things take time. And I had been training a lot up until this point, and I had always looked after myself through cycling or martial arts, track and field, volleyball. There was always something. And so I decided to look closer into the science of how our bodies work and how we could get the very best out of them. And I stuck with that for about a year. And then corporate hosting came back first. And then about a year later, or the end of that year, I got a very unexpected call from the Gadget Show asking if I would consider returning.
Would you consider sort of that the way media is going, or certainly is it quite established now in terms of like online entertainment? Would you consider, right, I can't go back into television, but I have a recognisable name, I have myself as a brand as such, and launch your own thing? Did that ever enter your mind at that time?
Absolutely. It has entered and it remains in my mind. And it is something that I've been looking at, I guess, with a level of seriousness maybe for the last 2 years. And I am waiting for the right project to occur to me, or the right project to come along.
Yeah.
It's definitely not off the table. I am not so old school that I don't believe that there is anything that could rival television.
Yeah.
Because television is, I won't say dying, television is changing. And you don't have to be a tech head or even that smart to see the rise of streaming channels, video on demand, some aspects of Sky, and just generally how we consume our content. This year, having accelerated a lot of that, the way we use digital platforms. It's funny because a lot of online stars that I meet long to have a show on TV, even though the audience is less and the money is less. There is something about being on television that they aspire to. I've had it for 25 plus years, and it's been great. What I want to do is keep on hosting, keep on presenting. And so if the end of the line came in television and opportunities arose online, I'd take them.
Do you think it's they want to move over to TV? Because it's almost like I see it a lot. I think my eldest now is 12, and I think sort of watching his viewing habits and being introduced to a lot of sort of YouTube and things like that, almost sort of through them. You have lots of big stars on YouTube and big stars on Twitch, but to a certain demographic, they're invisible. Whereas on TV, it's there, and Bob down the road knows who I don't know, Ryland is, or
Yeah.
someone like that. They're there, and that's something almost that you can't achieve at the moment on YouTube or TikTok, and that you appeal to a certain amount of society, but when you want
Yeah,
even though it might not pay more, it's still that almost that human need of everyone knows who I am. If you see what I
yeah,
mean, do you think it's
yeah.
that?
Maybe there may be an element of that, but to me, it's like it's a matter of numbers. You know,
Yeah,
you can have 1.2 million people a week watching your show on television, or
yeah,
you can have 20, 30 million views
yeah,
of your work.
yeah.
As a financial model, that works
Oh yeah,
very
that's
well.
it.
And so for me, that makes sense. If I could do
Mm,
something that would reach that big an audience, even if it was considered niche, it might be
yeah,
niche in this country, but on a global scale,
Mm.
that's it.
you know, that could buy a few roofs over your head
Mm,
if you were so inclined. Um, but yes, maybe there is an aspect of TV celebrity and walking down the street and people of all ages knowing who you are.
mm,
I guess for me, that only occurs because I've been doing it for so long. You know, I literally hosted. You know, I can meet someone and say, you know, I literally I've been hosting TV shows since your parents were your
yeah,
age. Um, and, you know, if television is where it's at for the remainder of my career until, you know, I'm in my 70s or 80s, then fine. But I don't have a negative view of online at all. If anything, I would say it has allowed more people to showcase their abilities and their program making that television never would have
yeah,
put on screen. And we get to see and hear so many more stories and a breadth, a rich diversity of stories that television would never have allowed, still won't allow.
You mentioned, Otis, about how online exposure has increased over the last 9 months, mainly because of obviously the pandemic. How has your career been affected by it, and how have you adapted if you've had to, that is?
Same as everybody else, really. In that, I used to go to work a lot more.
yeah. We can
I used to
relate.
travel. I used to travel the world in search of tech and gadget stories, and I would host events, mainly award shows, in front of audiences of hundreds. You know, venues that would hold 800 people, all sat down in their regalia and their tuxedos and whatnot, and I would host events. Haven't done anything like that
Mm,
Mm.
since December, so a year. I'm doing a lot more of my work in this setup, hosting radio days and award shows from home. So that's how it's affected me. I'm using Zoom as much as anybody else.
Mm.
I'm seeing maybe a few less faces, but I'm seeing them in 2 dimensions.
yeah,
And I haven't been on a plane since February. And normally by this point, I'd have been on a large handful of flights. So that's how it's impacted me. But I have been fortunate in that after the first 3 months of lockdown, Gadget Show was, you know, straight on the blower and said, we're ready to start recording again. So in, you know, a very COVID safe, or as COVID safe as productions can be, I've been back doing my day job.
One of the questions that me and Matt both had for you is, and this steps away from it, but I'm sure you've spent a lot of time on them. Well, I hope you have. Xbox or PlayStation?
I'm not really a gamer.
Really?
Yeah. So
How dare you?
Really?
This chat is cancelled. When I was growing up, it was my friends who had the ZX Spectrums and the Commodore VIC-20s and 64s, and I wanted them and asked my parents for them. My parents couldn't afford them, and because they weren't directly related to education, I was never going to get them.
Yeah.
Maybe the closest I came was my dad inquiring about the cost of a BBC Micro. And at school in computers, you know, some of the earliest lessons we had was writing the simple program 10, go to 10.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even remember how it goes. And computer science just didn't grab me because we weren't dissecting cyborgs and androids, etc.
Yeah.
So I didn't take it. When I moved out into my own place, late 90s, I bought a PlayStation, and I messed about with Grand Theft Auto. And then I realized this is my own flat, so I can have parties around here. I can have friends. I can have girls around here, and so slowly, gaming sort of faded into the background. I think the last console I had was a PS3.
Yeah.
I am a terrible manager of my time. And the last thing I need is the kind of distraction that gaming would put in front of me. So I maintain a healthy distance and try and keep abreast of what's going on. But there isn't a console in the house anymore, and I'm not a gamer.
I was going to say, does that also impact on having kids as well? Because me and Matt have both got kids of our own, and one of the questions we had was, how much do you encourage kids, and your kids in particular, to embrace new technology like gaming consoles and iPads and so forth, and how much exposure do you think is right for them?
So they see us using the phones to make calls, to video chat to our relatives, and to maybe operate the odd light in the house. They know what the phones are. They know how to use them, but we don't let them have them, and they don't have their own. As a treat, if my daughter, who's four and a bit, we have a treat box, and in the treat box might be a new book, a new game, maybe a sweet, or a voucher that allows her 20 minutes of iPad time. And that's it. And it's the CBeebies website, or she can watch a bit of Sesame Street. We use the TV more. So the TV on a Saturday morning, sometimes on a Sunday morning, or as we're getting everything ready for dinner. So they really, they are exposed to a screen, the big screen, the main TV screen, a handful of hours a week. And their exposure to, if they've got one of the smart devices in their hands, it's because we've left it somewhere and they've picked it up. But what we want to do, or what we want to do with our kids, is bolster as much of a love of the outdoors and interacting with people before the influence of screens come in, because we know there will come a point where there's very little control that we have over them having such devices. But as long as we have instilled in them an art of conversation, how to interact with other human beings, and a love for other things.
Yeah.
They love their scooters, they love cycling. When we go out to dinner, we all chat. We don't plug them in and let them watch while, we've all gone out for dinner, so we should all be taking part. If it's just my wife and I that want to go out, then we'll find a babysitter and keep the kids at home. Yeah. So the short way of saying that is, I think there are benefits from children being involved in screen time. Manual dexterity is a lot higher for children who have had exposure to those kind of things. They're better with fine motor movement. But I see far too many kids looking at these screens and not engaging with their siblings or their parents. And it's the same the other way. I see parents pushing kids in prams or walking with their kids, and they're just focused on what's going on their phones, and they're not paying attention to their kids. And these are, these are vital years. So my wife and I believe quite strongly about that. And despite being a tech advocate, screen time is the one thing we're very firm on and about, in terms of minimizing their exposure to it as much as we can.
Definitely. I think it's really important. I followed exactly the same with my two. I think it's that, particularly when they're older, there is much more of an allure for them. And particularly, I think it, for myself, and it may be the same with you, when you also get older, is that I brought mine up loving Star Wars and superheroes and movies and those sort of things, and sharing my influence and art and things like that. Yeah. And unfortunately, comes with that is they're going to love the same things that I love, and they're going to love watching TV, certain programs. They're going to love computers. They're going to love games consoles, and then, but it's having that, sharing that understanding of how they work, but the responsibility of them and the background as well, isn't it?
But you hit the nail on the head, Matt. You said you're sharing, so it's not, you're not using your smartphone or the games console exclusively as a pacifier, or as a nanny. When the TV's on, distraction, or when you're gaming, you're all doing it. It's not have that shut up, you're doing my head in kind of thing. It's let's all get involved in this together. You're still talking, you're enjoying, and don't get it twisted, James. We can't do that all the time. Sometimes you need the TV.
It's a gift. And
it is. It's a treat. It's a treat. It's the TV. In our house, the TV is still a privilege for the kids. I grew up without a TV in my room. I never had a TV in my room. Even this house that my wife and I have been in for 10 years is the first place I've lived in where there's been a TV in the bedroom. So I lived 37 years of my life without a TV in the bedroom, and I am absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll do the same with the kids. The TV is a treat. It's a privilege to have it. There are those that don't, and there are those that have a TV in every room, and they're always on screen and stuff like that. But they are not my children.
Can you tell us a little bit about Glassmates, which is something we looked at over on your Instagram page?
Yeah. So Glassmates is a collective of 3 very good friends, Jimmy, Nigel, and myself. We love a tipple, we love a dram, we really enjoy a cocktail. And Glassmates started out as a TV show idea, following 3 friends visiting whiskey distilleries around initially Scotland. this didn't happen for one reason or another. And so we entered the event space and started sharing our love and knowledge of whiskies, rums, brandies, etc. with other people. So we gather people in a room and we do tastings. And that was something that we had been doing for around a year. And then, and we were looking to move that energy, the Glassmates energy and the ethos into a visual space, and then COVID hit. So what we do now is every Friday, we host an event called Distance Drumming, and we talk to people in the drinks industry about what they're doing, latest releases and expressions. We talk to our followers about cocktails. We toast the week, because this distance drumming began during lockdown. We've made it to the end of another week. Congratulations, everybody. Who would you like to thank?
Yeah.
What are you thankful for this week? And most importantly, what's in your glass? What are you drinking? We talk about that, and we've had drinks ambassadors, and we've got master distillers lined up, award-winning whiskey writers. And it's just a nice, relaxed way to end the week, and a good excuse to have a drink. But Glassmates, we look at the world of drink, and we sort of distill it into a form where people can understand what's in their glass a bit better, and make better informed choices about what they're drinking.
Have you got a favourite whiskey?
It changes with the season. I think when I first started taking whiskey seriously, it was Speyside whiskey, Speyside Scotch. So Balvenie, Glenfiddich, etc. Then my top area became Islay, where you can quite literally taste the salty air and the local peat to varying degrees in the whiskies. And I think at the moment, my favourite whiskies are coming out of Ireland. So whiskey with an E, and the Teeling distillery. But as my journey continues, I'm sure that, my taste will change. I love a bourbon. Wild Turkey do a great one. They developed one with Matthew McConaughey called Long Branch. Michter's, great American whiskey as well. And the whole world is getting in on the act. The Swedes, the Australians, there's a Goan whiskey that's really nice. The English whiskey scene is very exciting right now as well. So there's so much to talk about, and so much to drink, and I'm very passionate about it.
What attracted you to whiskey in the first place?
It's got some legs in it then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in more ways than one. I didn't start drinking till relatively late. I was at uni, and I was teetotal, very much into my health and fitness. I was doing track and field at the time and playing volleyball, and all I could see around me were people drinking to excess and falling about the place. And I didn't really want a part of it. And then I started drinking for all the wrong reasons. I got my heart broken, so decided to go out and get drunk. And I found that pints were always really, really filling. So I moved on to whiskey, bourbon and Coke, and then didn't want to drink so much syrup with my whiskey, but didn't know where to go. And then someone I was dating was working for a PR company that looked after drinks, mainly wines and whiskies, and she introduced me to other whiskies and bourbons. And then since then I've been trying to drink as many different varieties as possible. So it's maybe best part of 15 years.
Wow. What do you look for? What's just being an absolute whiskey novice?
Well,
What's the
here's
key,
the
or is
thing.
it personal?
It's incredibly personal.
Yeah.
And just like wine, it's dependent on your environment. So the mood you're in, the people you're with, and the weather. And I don't have a developed enough palate to be able to identify exactly what I'm tasting. But when I stumble across a good one, I know that I like it, and I can sip it for. I can just keep on sipping.
Yeah.
But that's whiskey, that's rum, cognac, and beer as well. I've been getting into beer a lot, and I really like experimentation. So I like it when people do something different with the old or with the existing.
Yeah.
So when someone matures their beer for a while in a whiskey cask, or when whiskey people mature their whiskey in Madeira casks or sherry casks or wine casks or beer casks, or there are so many different ways of marrying flavors. Teeling, who I'm speaking to as part of our podcast in the next couple of days, they've matured their existing small batch whiskey in ginger beer
Wow.
barrels.
I bet that tastes amazing.
The result is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And look, the result flies off the shelves really quick, but if you can get one, it's not expensive. You don't have to pay into the hundreds for a good bottle of whiskey. You just have to know where to look, and that's where we as Glassmates try to help.
Well, we've listed all the different things that you've done: TV, presenting, singing. You've been a personal trainer. You've got a degree in pharmacy. You're doing Glassmates. What is there left for you that you want to tick off the list in your future?
Actually, I think the reason I've done all of those things is just a desire to keep going. And if I have to make small changes or learn new things in order to keep going, then that's fine by me, because there are new skills, new experiences and stuff. And so I don't know what's left to tick off, but what I definitely want to do is not stop, just keep going.
Okay. One thing that we haven't actually talked about is your comic books, which I understand you have a very large comic book collection.
I say I do. I want to say I did, or sometimes I'm tempted to say I did, because I don't collect physical comics anymore. I ran out of space.
Yeah.
Where I would have stored my comics once upon a time now has children. So my comic book collection is in storage, and it's about 8,000 strong. I had a mild culling a few years ago before the comics went into storage. And I continue to read, but nowhere near at the same pace as I used to.
Yeah.
But I've been collecting since I was 15, so over 30 years.
Wow. Is there a preference in terms of the types or the characters and so on?
They tend to mainly be Marvel, DC, and then every now and again a graphic novel will come out from any quarter, not necessarily DC or Marvel. Independence, something will come out that is just supreme, and I'll pick that up. But for the most part, over that time period, I've been consistently reading about Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Batman, Nightwing, and The Incredible Hulk. And then other titles have come and gone over the years.
What's your most prized comic book that you have?
The one that got me into it all, The Killing Joke.
Yeah.
So I was busy taking the piss out of a friend who was reading comic books, chiding him for having such a kiddie-like endeavor. And he slid his copy of The Killing Joke over to me and said, read that and let me know what you think tomorrow. And I read it cover to cover in one night, and I was blown away by it. And since then, I've been a fan. That's probably the most cherished.
Yeah.
The most valuable would probably be part 2, 3, or 4 of A Death in the Family, because I started collecting just after the readership voted by a very narrow margin for the Joker to murder Jason Todd. And you couldn't get issue 1 for Love Nor Money when I started, and I was just about able to scrape, I think, a second print of number 2, and then a first print of 3, and maybe a third print of 4. And what else? And The Dark Knight Returns, the original Dark Knight Returns, which is Frank Miller? I believe so. Frank Miller. Killing Joke is Alan Moore.
Yeah.
Those and they are the first comics I bought. I would have to have someone look through my comics, check their sort of condition, to let me know which one was actually the most valuable.
Is that sort of a concern to you, though? It sounds like you love them for what they are, rather than sort of collecting them for the purpose of collecting.
Oh yes. So it was never about collecting. If it was, over the years I've been collecting, I would have some major editions in my collection, but I only ever wanted to just read them. So I never bought. I rarely bought, more than one copy of a given edition.
Yeah.
Even if it said collector's edition, it would be the only copy that I could afford, or the only copy that I had. So I'd tear into the packaging and read it.
As a big fan of the comic books, do you find the movies are a good representation of some of the stories?
I thoroughly enjoy the movies. I think Kevin Feige has done an amazing job with Marvel, now Disney Marvel. I think he's been phenomenal. I'm not sure about his appointment as grand overseer of film, television, and comics themselves. But I think what he has achieved with the movies and his foresight and planning, from Iron Man, I think, has been phenomenal. As a comic book fan, when they first announced Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, I was livid.
Really?
I was really, really upset. I was like, why have you picked this dude? What? Pick a Charlie Chaplin playing Oscar winner. Pick an unknown and grow it with him. And I wasn't an avid reader of Iron Man in the comic books, but he is probably my favorite character in the MCU.
Yeah.
The on-screen MCU. I think RDJ did a fantastic job. But yeah, I really enjoy them. I salute the way they are able to tell an engaging and full story in 2 and a bit hours, and haven't suffered any of the issues that DC and Warner Brothers have, which is probably too many cooks.
Yeah.
Or was too many cooks. There have been 1 or 2 decent movies in the last while, and things look quite exciting for them going forward. But for me, I think Marvel they've gone clear. And I very much enjoy I enjoy the movies. Yeah.
Otis, thank you so much for coming on our show. For our listeners and our viewers, where can people find you on social media?
So you can find me I'm mainly on Instagram. So Ortis Deley, ORTISDELEY. That's my handle on Instagram and Twitter, and also at Glassmates UK for any drinky stuff you might be interested in. And of course, Channel
thank
5,
you very much for joining
Fridays,
us.
7
And on
o'clock.
television. Don't forget that part.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very
joining
much.
us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been my pleasure chatting to you both.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Don't forget, if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching and listening on, because in that way you won't miss out on any future episodes we put out.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms as well. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and give us a follow, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the latest episodes and posts that we put out there. But thank you for listening and watching.
And we'll see you next episode.